And YouTuber subscribers and friends alike, it's Grant coming at you from a Wal-Mart in Brownsville, Texas. I haven't been on the video in a while because I just haven't had much in the way of content. I've been trying to stay put outside of that Arctic storm that we just had in Texas, where it actually snowed down here. I was able to avoid it, just barely, but didn't avoid the temperatures. Finally getting on the upside of that. I was just sitting here thinking that I haven't made a video in a while, and I'm sorry that there ain't much video to look at. It's more of an audio vlog this time than anything, because I'm not feeling so great today. But just want to keep you up to date on the van. The van situation has gone downhill. It's taken more coolant to use it. The rear brakes, one brake on the passenger side rear is completely out, and I think it needs a rotor. And you can hear it squeak, but it warns people as you drive by in front of Walmart that I'm coming, and they get the hell out of their way when they hear the brake going squeak, squeak, squeak. But anyway, on the other side, I have two new brakes in the front, pretty virtually new. I replaced them when I was in Miles City less than like 4 or 5 months ago. So they're still good. It's still safe to operate. But now it's having battery issues. The alternator is trying to keep up, but I think the alternator will be going out next. And the main thing is it's got the head gasket, the upper end head gasket going out in the van itself. And basically it's like if a person had a slight bleeding heart, and then you had like all sorts of scrapes on the skin. There's no point in fixing all the scrapes on the skin if you're going to bleed out and die from your heart. And that's kind of the same situation with this van. The engine's going to eventually give, and it's not worth fixing. There's just, bare minimum it'd be like $2,500 at the cheapest if you're lucky, and this van ain't worth it because it's spent 17 years in Detroit, and the rock and the salt mixed underneath it pretty much just rusted the whole bottom end of it. The fuel lines would need to be redone and everything if you were going to redo an engine. But it's not worth it. Time you do all that, you're better off buying a different van. And I was sitting here thinking about this summer coming up because I want to try to make this van get to April, at least April Fool's Day. Today is February 19th, 2021. First time I made a video in 21. 2020 was one hell of a year, let me tell you. I no longer qualify for unemployment because they looked into 2019's tax return and income and everything, and that was the year that I was hitchhiking. And I don't have any proof of work, so I won't be able to qualify for 21 unless they decide to change that in the next package coming up. We all should be getting our $1,400 stimulus package supposedly sometime mid-April, they were thinking. They're going to pass it sometime here in mid-March. So hopefully sometime in April, which will be about perfect for me in terms of in sometime at first or the middle of April. I'm probably going to scrap the van and hoof it north, but I'll probably take a bus or something if I've got the money to do it. Because it'd be faster and easier, and hope that the buses aren't full because of COVID and all that. It's not my primary mode of travel, but I don't think this van's going to make it back to Miles City. My first thought was to try to make it back to Miles City and store this van this summer, so I could do other things on foot, but I don't think it's going to make it back. It's not, there's just too much issues with it. The main one being every now and then it fights you to start now, and it's not the starter, it's the timing belt, because the engine itself is pretty much trying to decide whether it wants to start or not. And I looked into it at Riley's the other day. The battery was fully charged, but it's acting like the battery was dead, so the battery's getting weak. But anyway, on top of that, they were saying it's most likely that the engine's about ready to turn over and lock. And it is sounding like that Plymouth van Grand Voyager thing that I had a long time ago in 2008. Sounded like right before she blew up. All I can do is keep the fluid in it, check the oil and check the coolant. Keep those levels up. But it'll eventually blow up, I think, because it's just not getting cooled down. It's got an upper end head gasket seal leak, which means it's evaporating or burning off the antifreeze as it sends it through there instead of cycling it around like it's supposed to. It just burns off what I put in there. So it's one step off of going boom, pretty much. But this van has served me well. I'm hoping to get it to a year out. But I was thinking, in terms of content and coming up this summer, I'm going to try, with COVID and all, to go to Miles City and get my passport. I'm going to try and pay for that out of the stimulus package coming up, because it's going to cost me, $200 or something for the card and the pack and all this stuff for the passport. And then it takes like 6 weeks to get it. But a friend of mine was telling me, technically speaking, you can walk across the border in Canada at Vancouver at the park and walk through the trees and down the other highway into like the little neighboring town and back around on the main highway and hitch out. And be in Canada without a passport and get through either which way, because then if you're caught in Canada without a passport, right now anyway, there's no fines or nothing, they just boot you right back out. So at the very least, you'd be given a ride back into the States or back up to Alaska, wherever I want to go anyway. Depending on how far in you make it. So I might squeeze through there doing that. I don't know. He said he did it and went there both ways and came back. Another option, obviously, would be to jump a freight train and use the freight trains from Vancouver up. Supposedly don't have much in the way of yards all the way up into Alaska until you get to about Alaska. My goal is to go up to Alaska this summer while the hotter months of the summer in June, July, August, somewhere there. Just to be able to say I've done Alaska since I did Hawaii. And then come back by August, or the end of August. And then I don't know about next winter. I was thinking either fly to Hawaii, depending on what the restrictions are with COVID by then, or go to Australia or someplace if they ever open the borders up to do that. And right now it's only domestic, and the only real thing that's outside of the U.S. that's domestic still is Hawaii. Or I might go down to Miami, Florida next winter. I don't know for sure what to do on the winter time. The other thing is, if they do actually pass the $15 an hour minimum wage, I would actually get a 50-cent raise if I go back to work at Wal-Mart in Miles City from where I was when they fired me a few years ago. Well, and Wal-Mart, if anybody would take it back, even if they fired you a long time ago. But which she even said, but that whole deal was because I went to Sam's Club in Rapid City and tried to get transferred over, and the only way they could do it was to clear the system on Walmart's side of it, since they're the same company but sister companies. And so they cleared it by firing me. So I basically fired myself on that whole deal, but I didn't know about it until about 2 years later when I went back to Sam's Club in Rapid City and asked about a job again. And he only had a meat cutting job or something that I didn't want to do. And they told me about it. And he said he was expecting me that next Monday, that following weekend, or that Friday when I did that. But nobody told me to transfer over and go and start right the next Monday, the next week. But anyway, I'm tempted to go back and do something like stocking shelves, because it is overnight. Walmart is doing most of the stocking overnight to help protect their employees, so you'd really only be working with employees instead of customers going back and forth. And then it'd be a 50-cent raise on top of what I had before. So I don't know, I'm thinking about it. And then if I did do that, I'd ask to work in pets, because then in pets you're likely to work by yourself all night long. Roughly, or just you and somebody else, if you're on overnight on pets. So I don't know, I was thinking about maybe possibly doing that and maybe going back to an apartment. This van life thing is getting old. I like the van life part of it, but the whole fighting the temperature and having to sleep in a sleeping bag and dealing with fleas off and on and stuff like that, between all that, I don't really want this kind of life. I would almost much rather be on the street on foot than living in a van. The van life itself is better because you can park virtually anywhere in any parking lot and sleep there versus having to be the homeless guy on the street at the hide in the bush or whatever on the edge of the parking lot. And I'm a bit more secured in here, having the doors locked and whatnot, but there are benefits to van life over being on the street, but if you don't have a vehicle that's reliable enough, it ain't, in my opinion, it's not worth it. And then lately I've had to deal with fleas again because they like the type O blood, and those make it really not worth it. I don't know if it's because of how dark it is now. See, the Walmart parking lot right now that I'm in is fully lit up, but as you can see on the video, it's pretty damn dark in here. And that's from the double layer of paint. I have paint on the outside and paint on the inside. So far, I've only been warned about it once in Texas by these Texas Rangers or Patrol or whoever they call them that were looking for drugs or Mexicans or cash or something. They didn't really care about anything else, but they warned me that, technically speaking, I shouldn't have the rear window painted over, but everything else could be legal. And this whole white spray-painted van thing has got me, I wouldn't say in trouble, but, people have called it suspicious and creepy, and I've been kidnapping people and all this other stupid crap that they used to do in Miles City. I think that counted 4 times this winter, so probably about once a month. or so I've been called. The van has been called in for that because people think it's suspicious because it's not normal to look like this or something with the windows covered up and they wonder what you're doing in there. Or so, I don't know. I mainly wish I had not done that for the traveling outside of Miles City. In Miles City, I love the idea of them calling and harassing the cops all the time because it was payback. And the history with that is on a different video, but outside of Miles City, I kind of wish I had a stock regular van that would fit right in. Especially now that I'm having problems with the battery and stuff. Like right now, I'm going to have to get it jumped to get it moved again. And that's 4 days from when I last jumped it, and I've driven it since then, like an hour between that. At different times, trying to conserve gas, but at the same time, you got to drive long enough to charge a battery. And it's just not keeping up, so I think the battery's going now, too. On top of the other engine problems, and I happened to notice the other day that it's taking more coolant, even in the wintertime in the cold. So she's on her way out, but and I'm 50% either way. I don't know which way to say it. I'm for having the van because I can lay here in the parking lot, and the struggles are much less. Especially right now, being a homeless guy on the street with COVID would be not fun. Back in the day, 2018 or before that, when they didn't have COVID, you could go into the library and sit there all day long, and you'd at least have some place to sit that has the Wi-Fi and all that. Nowadays, you can't even loiter outside to like the edge of Walmart without cops being called 20 minutes later, like, what you doing there? Even though you're nowhere near affecting anybody else. 1,000 feet away from anybody else, but they still get called on because you're not supposed to be loitering these days. Everybody's supposed to hide in their houses or something. Yeah, and then recently this Arctic storm with Texas, people were sleeping in their driveways in their car to stay warm because all their houses' heat failed. And I feel sorry for them on one end, but on the other end of it, I think it's funny as hell. Make fun of us people living in a van and everything, and then when you have to do it yourself, what do? The first thing you do is you go out and sleep in your car with the heat on. Like, really? Where do you think you learned it from? But I'm not going to go too far into that. I'm just saying people should maybe treat people who live in vans and RVs better. Because we might have one up on them in the long run. It might seem like people who live in a house have one up on us, but because of the creature comforts. But in the end, those creature comforts can easily be taken away, just like Texas the other day. Arctic temperatures screwed up the lines, and then they don't have heat and they don't have water. And I feel bad for them, but I've been living here without heat and not much water because I go and buy it each day. And I get around fine. You just get a sleeping bag and put it in a van and go. Obviously, I went south as far as I could go to get out of the snow part of that. And then I just dressed up and stayed in the van. The temperature was a little cold, but I avoided the snow at least. But I just thought I would make a more of an audio vlog than a video vlog, because right now I'm not feeling too great. My back still hurts. I'm thinking about the content of what I'm going to do this summer, and that's what I'm planning on doing, is trying to sneak up to Alaska, and then after that go to Miami, Florida, or go to Hawaii if I could fly there, or go to Australia if they actually fly international by then, which I kind of highly doubt. This thing will be over by next winter, but you never know. They keep finding more and more different trains in Europe and then over in South Africa and everything. They're just trying to drag it out. I don't know if the government gets extra benefits from doing it this way or what. In my opinion, it's not any worse than the flu, except for it is for old people. I guess it's killing 80% of the old people that it infects or something, but that's not any worse than the flu when you look at the actual flu rates. In Hawaii, right now, if I were to fly there, you have to get tested beforehand, like 2 days beforehand or something, and bring that in within 48 hours or something of your flight. And then when you fly over there, you got to be quarantined by 10 days, and you have to download an app that they have or something and walk around with the app, and then they, would see whatever hotel or house or wherever you're at, if you're quarantining or not or whatever. And in my way of life, I wouldn't be able to quarantine like they could do. People can fly to Hawaii right now and go live in a resort, and they call it quarantining technically because they're in the same spot all day, all night, and they just eat at the resort restaurant or bring food up to the room or whatever. They're in one place, and then that's quarantined. However, if I were to fly over there and be a beach bum right now, 3 days of doing that app, they'd say I wasn't quarantining because I'm out and about everywhere and it's not listed as someplace. You know, maybe you could try and sleep on the edge of a hotel and then maybe fool the app into thinking you're at the hotel, maybe. But so right now it's not really feasible to go to Hawaii, although I'd love to do it again, especially for the temperatures. But I just thought I'd make a video for content and get this uploaded. Like and subscribe, leave comments, and we'll catch you in a flip. Peace.